Hello everyone, my name is Anne McPhee and I'm here to do the next part of our presentation on reinforcement. I'm going to talk about maintaining those behaviors that you learned about in the previous sections. And first of all, I want you to know that the ultimate goal of any reinforcement schedule or plan is that the individual will eventually be able to do the behavior without being reinforced at all. Now, response generalization is a big part of this. Response generalization means that the behavior has been generalized or it occurs in many different settings with different people at different times. For example, a child may know how to put on their shoes at the doctor's office. They may know how to put on their shoes at home and at school. That means that the behavior has been generalized, and if they're able to do it regularly, then it has been maintained as well. Now, I'm sure you're wondering, how do we maintain those behaviors? Well, there are three important considerations to think about when we're talking about this. First of all, when we teach a child skills or language, we need to make sure that it is important and relevant to their lives. For example, a child who is learning to put on a winter coat, this skill will be taught in a cold climate, not a warm climate. Now, does anyone have another example for me? Jeff? Yes. Jeff has just said that we need to not teach a child in the desert how to use an umbrella because that wouldn't be relevant to them. Okay, moving right along. The skills that are related to or built upon by other skills the child is learning are more likely to be maintained. For example, a child who knows how to use a pencil will be using that skill whenever they are learning how to write. So they will have more of an opportunity to practice using and holding their pencil. Now, finally, using maintained behaviors to reinforce a child more regularly will help the child feel more confident with the new behaviors. So these behaviors can be things like touching your nose. They can be things like knowing how to put on your shoes, but these are things that they can do, they have already mastered, and they're used regularly in therapy sessions to teach a new skill. So someone who can touch their nose is used when they're learning how to touch their elbow. Now it's important to keep in mind about fading reinforcement. If we do not fade the reinforcement, then the individual will always be expecting to be reinforced whenever they do the skill. So we don't want someone to only touch their nose if they're going to be given a Smartie. We want them to just be able to touch their nose whenever they need to. So there are a few different steps. Sometimes they follow this model, sometimes they don't, but it would all be quite similar to this when we're fading the reinforcement. So step one, we'll reinforce less frequently. I have suggested we use a variable schedule, which would be every 3rd, 7th, maybe every 11th response. And then we'll move on to the next step, which would be reinforcing even less frequently, maybe only the 5th and the 12th response, which may be the last response. After that, the next step would be to reinforce only at the end of the training session. Perhaps they get to use an iPad at the end of the training session if they've been able to do the task as we desire. Finally, the individual will be given no reinforcements unless we see, of course, a drop in their responding. So if the child is regularly able to touch their nose, but we stop reinforcing them altogether, and then they stop showing that skill, then that might mean we need to go back to reinforcing them again. And of course, we cannot forget that we need to check in and we need to make sure that these behaviors are being maintained. We can't just teach a skill and then walk away. We always need to double check. Sometimes we'll do that on a week, a month, 3 months. We'll just keep coming back to it. Now, of course, how we know if a behavior has been maintained is through data collection. We use data collection to let us know, is the behavior continuing to occur with less reinforcements, with no reinforcements, and if so, then we can know that this behavior is actually being maintained and we no longer need the reinforcements. Now, here in this example, I have 4 different trials that have been shown to you. The individual has shown the correct response in all 4 of those trials, and they've only been reinforced on the 1st and on the 4th. So if they are able to continue this progress, if we take away the first reinforcement and they're still able to do it properly, and then we later give no reinforcement and we're still all getting correct responses, there's a good chance that this behavior is actually maintained. Now, finally, I wanted to talk to you about a research article because I find that research helps me to solidify my learning. This article is called "Do Behavioral Approaches Teach Children with Autism to Play, or Are They Pretending?" And it is about The idea that maybe some people with autism might not actually learn how to play from their therapy sessions. They are more likely to just do it so they can get reinforcement or do it because it's been repetitively taught to them. Now, it is great. This article did find that it is true they have learned how to play, but only under certain circumstances. And of course, it's under the circumstances we have talked about here with response generalization and with maintaining the behaviors. If you're interested in this article, I have included it on the handout that you'll be receiving later on this evening. So I just want to say that next we're going to be doing your post-test. You already did the pre-test, and we'll check your learning, as well as we'll come back at the very end and we'll give you some great tips and tricks, and I'll give you that handy dandy handout that we have for you so that you can take it home and use it with your families. Thank you very much for your time. Have a lovely evening.